Broadcasting. All right, we're live.
Okay. Good morning, citizens of Leavenworth. This is Mayor Mike Griswold here for our first Facebook town hall. A little background on this. Since I was elected by my fellow commissioners in December to serve as mayor for the year 2020, part of my approach is to really emphasize strategic communication and strategic outreach. This is one of my priorities as mayor, and thus far I've done that by writing 2 monthly guest columns in the Leavenworth Times, one for January, one for February, and I had one all teed up for March, but with what's happened over the last 10 days to 2 weeks in terms of this coronavirus emergency medical crisis, I've postponed that a little bit, but part of my original intent was to hold town halls, so this is the first one of the town halls, and my original intent was to field questions, which we will do today. I have a feeling a lot of the questions may be in this corona virus 19 area, which is perfectly fine, and we'll be ready to answer your questions, but if there are other questions in other areas, please feel free to ask those questions. I talked in my first 2 columns, I talked about the priorities for the city in various areas such as infrastructure, public safety, parks and recreation, etc. So those questions are perfectly acceptable too, if that's what you want to do. I'm going to introduce the city manager. He's here with me today, participating in this Facebook town hall, Mr. Paul Kramer, and the assistant city manager, Mr. Taylor Tedder, who's going to be our, really the person who's facilitating and kind of tracking us through this monitoring the questions that come in and being able to provide certain information as we go through the next hour. So I appreciate both of them being here. And I have a lot of knowledge and will answer the questions to the best of my ability, but if there's one that's really, really technical and if I need to turn to the city manager, I will go ahead and do that. Very briefly, what we've been doing as far as responding to the coronavirus emergency, the crisis, is we've been providing community health updates. We've been supporting our Leavenworth County Health Department, and we've been maintaining the services of the city and letting the citizens know if there are adjustments in terms of hours and the way that those services are provided. Now, the best way to get the information that we've been tracking and that we've been working is to go to our website, leavenworthkansas.org/coronavirus. That will take you directly to the information that we have on our webpage, and that falls into this area of the community health updates, things we're doing to support the Leavenworth County Health Department, and maintaining the services of the city. And so I would urge you to do that for information to keep you up to speed as far as how the city is responding to this medical and health crisis. We want to get to any questions that will hopefully come in during this town hall, but we also want to provide some updates on COVID-19 that citizens might not have heard. I'll very briefly go over a few of these updates and then we'll start into the questions. Overall city facilities. At this time, the city facility closure has been extended to April 5th, at which time we will evaluate where we are. This includes not only City Hall and the community center, but all city facilities of all types, including the recycling center, park shelters, animal control, etc. There is one exception I'd like to announce right now. It concerns the brush site. Starting Tuesday, March 24th, we will reopen to the public with certain protections put in place for our employees and the public. The brush site is pretty well isolated and lends itself to social distancing. We know spring is here and our residents and businesses rely on this service. We are also going to make this service free to residential use for 30 days. Here's some other important updates. Spring cleanup. We are canceling the kickoff event for April 18th. We will ask groups to complete their grids in smaller groups or in phases. We will work with the groups to get them t-shirts, bags, and everything that they have received in the past during our spring cleanups. All community center events are canceled through April 5th. We will continue to make announcements as when and if this guidance changes. Farmers Market. Haymarket Square is a city facility, and city facilities are currently closed. Whether that is a park shelter, city hall, the community center, Haymarket Square, etc., we are not allowing reservations, official events to take place at our city facilities. May 1st is still 6 weeks away, and we remain hopeful that at that time we'll be able to open the farmers market, but we'll have to wait and see. And May 1st, of course, is the date that the farmers market opens every year. Easter egg hunt. The event is canceled, but we have 10,000 eggs that we need to use. So the city is working on an event to be held when appropriate, where we can get those 10,000 eggs to the children in our community. We don't know what that looks like at this minute, but we will provide updates. At this point, Mr. Taylor Tedder will either pass myself questions, or we will start to work through a set of 10 questions that I kind of brainstorm with the city manager before this event, before this Facebook town hall. So at this point, we'll transition to the questions from the public and from the citizens of Leavenworth. Mr. Taylor, are there any questions yet?
Not yet.
Okay. I'm going to pose a question, and if I can answer it, if I'm the best person to answer it, I'll answer it. If not, I'll turn it over to the city manager for his answer. The first question: how will you enforce the rule of no large gatherings? Mr. Kramer?
As I think the public has seen and been well aware, the county health officer has enacted an order limiting public gatherings to 10 or fewer people. He's also closed restaurants, bars, and food establishments. The question then comes into place: how is that enforced? Our police department is doing that through the restaurants and bars, but we're really doing it through sort of a proactive compliance, and we're all in this together, and we've had very good response from our business owners. We haven't had any issues at this time, so we're doing it sort of proactively with communication and talking to the people that own those businesses or organize those events. Any events that the city licenses, sanctions, are canceled, so we're helping do it, accomplish that task that way. So we're taking it sort of on a case-by-case basis, but trying to do it with proactive approach with our business owners.
Mr. Taylor, are there any questions from our citizens yet?
Not quite yet.
Okay, don't be bashful. I mean, this is a two-way conversation. When I really believe in the importance of strategic communication, and when the night that I was elected to be the mayor for 2020, I talked about my priority is always to listen, learn, and lead. And this particular Facebook live event, this particular town hall, is part of my intent in bringing that to fruition. And I have been out in the community over the last two and a half months talking to some groups, not recently, not in the last 2 weeks, but in the first month or two. And most of the time I could answer their questions, but if there's a question that I couldn't answer, I committed to them to find out the answer and then bring that information back to the citizens I am talking to. And that'll be the same approach here for this particular Facebook town hall. I'm going to ask another question of the city manager, and will there be recreational sports this spring and/or summer?
The coronavirus outbreak really intensified in between our winter and spring season. So right now, we don't have anything going on, but registrations are active, and those programs were supposed to start the beginning of May. As of right now, we have not made that decision. I know people are planning what they're going to do this spring and summer, so we hope to make that decision very soon. The Kansas State High School Activities Association has canceled all spring sports as they canceled school. And I think just yesterday, the Leavenworth Soccer Association has announced that their spring 2020 season is canceled. I'll certainly work with the mayor and get his thoughts on it, work with our Parks and Recreation Department and the County Health Department. But at this point, I would think it would be highly unlikely that the city would go forward with our baseball and softball programs as they start in May. So that's where we are now, but we should have a official update here in the next couple of days on our spring and summer seasons.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taylor, any?
Yeah, we have a question here from our Facebook Live feed. It says, with the community center closed, will rentals paid be reimbursed? The answer to that is yes. If you've registered or done any sort of prepayment for an event at the community center, we will work to reimburse those funds. It's not always easy in governmental financials to process those quickly, how we pay that, but we will definitely work to reimburse all those events that are forced canceled by this issue.
Okay, very good. The city manager and his staff have been very, very busy, obviously, the last week to 10 days. And so I'm going to ask another question, which I've made a general reference to in the first 5 or 10 minutes of this Facebook town hall. And the question is, what is the city doing to help prevent the spread of COVID-19?
Internally, we've closed all city facilities. So we've been asked to do that. We've been following the best practices, and we've done that. Further, starting this week, I issued an order that will effectively reduce the city workforce that is in any building at any one time by about 50%. So how are we doing that? The directive was to not impact city services by doing that. So, for instance, if we have 2 building inspectors, they're going to alternate which days they're in the building, and they're going to be at home the other days. Some of our work is done in the field. Obviously, our parks crews can distance themselves safely, so we will keep that going with our full staff. Our streets workers, repairing our streets, fixing our potholes, they can also practice social distancing and are not in a building, so they will continue. So there's a lot of city functions that don't require us to send people home. We also have capabilities for a lot of offices. One, for example, our GIS, which is our mapping department. The gentleman in charge of that can work from home. He can fully perform the functions of his job from home. And so at this point, we are doing that. Otherwise, we are trying to maintain all of our facilities in compliance with the orders, the large group orders, and doing everything we can.
Mr. Kramer, do you think it would be, just for me to review very quickly, what has come down from the Leavenworth County Health Department? As far as the major points that because we have received 2 orders over the last, since I think the first one came out on Tuesday, and then there was an update on Wednesday from the Leavenworth County Health Department. And just let me review what the information that they have put out. First of all large public gatherings of people in the county are prohibited. Large public gatherings are those with more than 10 people in attendance or anticipated to attend, both indoor and outdoor, except for healthcare facilities. A gathering does not include normal operations at spaces where persons may be in transit or coming and going individually or in groups of less than 10 persons. And of course, this, in terms of the 6 feet between people who have to gather in these small groups as part of this social distancing practice and policy that really is in place here within the city and the county, the state, and in most states across the nation. For all gatherings of people, the health officer strongly encourages everyone to follow the guidance provided by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, known as the CDC, for social distancing. The second major point, all restaurants, dining facilities, bars, taverns, clubs, and movie theaters in Leavenworth County, Kansas are hereby ordered to close to the public effective at midnight on March 18th, 2020, which was, actually it was 12:01 a.m., which was the March 18th, which was Wednesday, until midnight on April, it said in the order April 1st. Is it April 5th now?
It's still April 1st.
It's still April
right now.
1st. Except that any such establishments may continue to provide carryout, drive-through and delivery of food, or where the establishment can maintain 10 or less persons with the proper social distance of 6 feet. In all areas, establishments must follow the guidance provided by the Centers for Disease Control, federal, state, and local public health officials, and the directives put out by federal, state, local public health officials for social distancing and infection control measures. And then there was one that came out about 24 hours later, just to do a little clarification, and I'll just make one or two points. One of the clarifications on the restaurants. Restaurants are allowed to stay open for delivery or takeout, and if they have a means to ensure no more than 10 people in their facility with adequate social distancing, they may allow indoor seating. Now, that's just a little further clarification of what I read about 2-3 minutes ago. Fitness facilities, due to the nature of use, should consider closing. That was one of the things in the update on Wednesday. Any business by its nature that does not allow for social distancing should be closed to the public. For example, barbershops, beauty salons, nail salons, and other face-to-face interactive businesses. These rules do not apply to businesses that are considered critical infrastructure, such as healthcare services, pharmaceutical, and food supply. These businesses have a special responsibility to maintain normal operations. There are other guidelines in place for these businesses, and I encourage those groups to educate themselves further via CDC guidelines. That was the actual verbiage from the county health officer, Mr. Jamie Miller. We encourage all people to stay home when possible. I'm reading from this order on Wednesday. Avoid any discretionary travel, shopping trips, and social visits. Utilize pickup and delivery services as much as possible. Utilize electronic communications as much as possible. So I'm going to ask, do we have a question, Mr.
We do.
Kramer?
We have a couple good questions.
Okay.
So one of the questions we received is, what about trash bag delivery or trash bag? Is there a delay in trash bag delivery? The answer is yes, there will be a delay. The trash bags delivered citywide are delivered by the Lions Club. They use a lot of help from St. Mary University students who have obviously been sent home for the semester. It's a Herculean physical task to deliver those to the entire city. We have those trash bags. The residents have paid for those trash bags and their refuse rates. And so at some point, when safe, when appropriate, we will get those trash bags out to the residents in the city. We also had another question about trash pickup. Would it be affected? No, this is part of our pledge to you to, until it's unsafe, to carry out all essential city functions, trash being absolutely one of those. We do not anticipate any disruption in trash service going forward, and we'll continue to pick up your trash. We had another question, a good question. What are you doing to keep first responders safe? The city of Leavenworth operates a fire department and a police department. We've seen other communities where there's been some quarantining of those services, and we're a large department, but any kind of quarantine would have a dramatic impact on our ability to provide services. So what are we doing? It starts with dispatch. We have talented, dedicated dispatchers, and they're gathering more information with every call. So we are able to make a better decision on a medical call that may not be dire or extremely serious, that we respond, but we stay back. We let the EMTs from the county service go in and assess. If needed, we will send a single individual in protective gear, and then they have protocol what to do when they come out, disposing of that protective gear. So absolutely, we are concerned about our police and our fire. We still are responding to all the police calls. We want to keep our community safe, and those people are out there every day on the front lines. We're working with our police chief, who's done a great job communicating with his department, but it starts at dispatch, and then we've taken some protective measures to assess each call sort of individually.
Good.
We had a question, and I've gotten this question a couple times, and I think we got it on the Facebook stream. Concerns about the homeless center run by volunteers. This is where we sort of get into a city role versus county role. We are facilitating the conversation between those who operate the shelter and the county health department. Decisions made on functions like that, public safety decisions or public health decisions, are made by the county health officer. It's important to respect that division of responsibility in government. The authority to make those decisions lies with the county health officer. So I've been in touch with Sister Vicky, who runs the homeless shelter here in the city of Leavenworth. And I know she's been in constant contact with Jamie Miller at the health department. So they're working on a plan. We're certainly available to facilitate that discussion, pass anything back and forth, but it is a communication between them and the health department.
You know, one of the things that I think most of our citizens would like to know about is what is going to happen to our our weekly city commission meetings. Well, we are going to obviously drive on and have these meetings. You can see here during this Facebook town hall that we have the proper social distancing between myself and the city manager and the assistant city manager, and we will do that for future meetings. In fact, we did that for our meeting this past Tuesday. But we also have to stay below, 10 or below, we've got to stay below that particular number. So we are not allowing the public to, at least for the foreseeable future, attend our weekly city commission meetings. But I am going to ask the city manager if you do have a question. I mean, the agendas for these meetings are posted on the city website and all the read-ahead material that you can look at if you're interested in a particular agenda item. But also during our meetings, the public meetings, not the study sessions, but we have a block for public comment, and that's a little bit hard to do if you're not actually here. So, Mr. Kramer, have we thought through maybe how if somebody really does have a question, like an open question from the public during our meetings?
So during regular commission meetings, we do hold a citizens comment period. We obviously are not having that. So we are allowing, if you have a comment that you'd like to make to the commission, the best way to do it is to reach out to the commission. Their information is on the website. Email them directly, email me directly. But if it's just something you would like read at a commission meeting, you can send it to our city clerk. Again, information is on the website. You could really send it to myself or the commissioners, and we'll route it to the city clerk. So we still want the public to be able to comment on items as possible, and we're sort of adapting to this.
Yeah, and that's the key word, adaptation. Americans have been adapting for over 200 years, and this particular crisis we're facing is like none other, at least in my lifetime. But I know that Americans, by and large, are going to help one another, adapt as they can over the next weeks and possibly months. We don't really know, but right now it's for a couple of weeks. But we'll see what happens nationwide, in our state, and also local. Each day seems like it brings some new news. So we will do our very best, and I have confidence that the citizens in our city will do everything they can to help their fellow citizens. And it's also an opportunity for us as citizens to lead and maybe do a little bit more than we were doing before in terms of helping people get through this. And one of the things my wife in particular and I, we were talking, and we're going to get out and being in the house for extended periods of time does get a little bit hard sometimes. So I would encourage people to get out. There's no prohibition against walking, as long as you maintain the proper social distance and you come across other walkers within the city, you've got to maintain that proper social distance. But if you have a pet or anything, a dog, be nice to get out there and maybe do that on a more regular basis than we've had the opportunity to do in the past. At least that's one of the ways that my wife and I are going to deal with this particular situation that we're in here. And then, of course, reaching out to family and friends and using our great information technology. And I realize all citizens don't have that connectivity to the internet. That's a little bit more of a challenge. Most of us have phones, but reach out to your friends, to your family members, and don't hesitate to take the initiative to talk about your concerns, because everyone reacts a little bit differently, but we should be here as a community, as neighbors, to support one another and deal with these uncertain times and these challenging times. Is there another question, Mr. Kramer?
Yeah, we have a couple different here. I think we want to reiterate the city's resources on what we're providing to the public. This sort of goes with the question we submitted ahead of time about how often city provide updates and how we can get them, and sort of our dedicated coronavirus page. Again, that's leavenworthchaos.org/coronavirus, or if you go to our city's just the homepage, one of the featured items under community news. And on that, we're going to be sharing county releases from the county health department. We're going to be sharing updates on city events. We're going to be sharing updates that affect the community. Those are updated as we get them in real time. So there's obviously a lot of places to get information, but we hope to provide useful information for our local residents.
Yeah, it's sort of, at least for the city, a one-stop shopping approach, which I think is really good. And, we can't put all information on that particular site, and I wouldn't want to do it because the important things will get, kind of be hard to really focus in. We're putting the important things that apply most directly to our citizens. And, if you have some suggestions along those lines for something that we may not be posting, please let us know. But we are cognizant that we don't want to just, make it a long list of things that are not as important as the priority items that we are focused on as a city in terms of the services that we provide and other general resources that can help our citizens keep up to speed with respect to what's going on with policies put out by the county, by our state, and by our federal government, policies and/or guidelines. There's a question here I'm gonna first turn to the city manager, but I have some ideas about this too. The question is, what are your plans to help the city get back to normal after we get through this? And I'll first turn to the city manager, but I'll have something to say about that too.
Right, so over the last couple weeks, we've been thinking about, specifically over the last week, how do we adapt throughout the rest of this year and into next year? And what really came to mind is our city budget. We are formulating our budget for 2021. We always work a year ahead, but this is a unique impact in that I think we're going to start seeing some discretionary spending going down, which the city is funded actually by 45% sales tax. We rely only on about 18 or 19% on property taxes, and we expect that revenue from sales tax to decrease. So what are we doing? We're stopping non-essential travel, essentially all travel, unless there's some extraordinary circumstance. Little things like that. Instructed all departments to stop any discretionary spending, even if it's in one of their line items. Those are small steps, and then we're looking at bigger steps. We're going to, in probably the next 15 days, presenting the commission with some options about delaying some projects. And let me be more clear about that. We're not going to delay our roads projects. That will 100% continue forward. We're not going to delay stormwater projects. Tuesday night, we're going to look at a sinkhole at 9th and Ottawa that needs to be repaired. We are not going to delay infrastructure projects. What we may delay is a playground equipment upgrade. We may delay painting park shelters for a year or two, something like that. that doesn't impact your ability to drive the streets, walk on the sidewalks, be able to move about the city, repair all of the sinkholes that have been created by stormwater issues. So we're going to be looking very closely at what we can do for this year and next year. We're very sensitive also to rates. The city handles refuse rates, water rates, and so we want to do what we can because we know that's going to be an issue for the majority of our residents. Any new costs or any increase in costs could be very harmful to our residents. So even at the refuse and wastewater level, we're seeing what we cannot do now to reserve some of those funds to maybe absorb what would normally be a larger rate increase.
And, the city does have, the city manager and the city commission does have good processes in terms of the times during the year when we look at our goals and objectives. And then, following that, we have a very, very thorough and comprehensive budget process. So I just reinforce what the city manager just said. We've got to keep an open mind in terms of our goals and objectives. I still think we're going to keep them pretty aggressive and pretty ambitious. And then if we have to scale back based on not getting as much in the way of fiscal resources because of what's happening with the economy and our businesses within the city of Leavenworth and really the economy across our nation and the economy globally, in fact, we will deal with that and make the necessary adjustments. One thing that this city has always been and has always had is really, really good financial management. It's financially strong, and that is an overarching, a first principle that your city government has followed for years, if not decades, and that will continue. We have to manage those resources as the very best stewards that the citizens expect us to be and that we've made an oath to do. So that's how we'll approach that. But where we need to adapt and be flexible in terms of changes to keep us moving forward, not losing sight of what we ultimately want to do, the commission is committed to doing that, and will do that. Another question. Will you be doing anything to help the local businesses affected during this time? I'm going to quickly turn to the city manager. There's a couple of things that specific things that I want him to comment on, but then I'll come back to that and give a more broad answer to that. Mr. Kramer, I was thinking maybe about some of the parking exceptions we're making and things like that, but could you just very quickly answer that?
Right. A lot of what we're doing is reacting to the orders that have been put in place. So our police chief used his authority to allow restaurants to use public parking places, on-street parking places in front of their establishment as pickup locations. That is as a result of the county order on the closure of bars and restaurants for anybody more than 10 businesses. We plan to see if we can partner with organizations like Main Street and the Chamber to start these social media trends of takeout food or online orders to help our local businesses. The city doesn't have things like a business license where that could be waived for a year. There's not a lot of extra fees in that. We fully intend to keep our full allotment of facade grants. That's a grant that we give to local businesses for improvements within their facilities. So we don't plan to pull back on any of those economic development incentive items. And then we're open to ideas from local businesses.
Yeah, that's true. And if you have some ideas, please get a hold of me or the other commissioners or the city manager, because we don't have a monopoly on good ideas, and there could be some things that I know that there's some things that we aren't thinking about that could help our local businesses. And we do have a good partnership with Leavenworth Main Street, and Wendy Scheit, who's the director of Leavenworth Main Street, and I exchanged emails either yesterday or the day before, and I'll just read a couple of points from her email in terms of what Leavenworth Main Street is doing to help businesses, particularly the small businesses downtown. and what she said, that most every restaurant downtown is converted to carry-out curbside service in an effort to not close. However, we may anticipate this could change as their food supplies change, but I've seen, signs out within the downtown of announcing that carry-out / curbside service. So I know that that is one of the things that's going on within our city. And Wendy says the Leavenworth Main Street is actively sharing this information on their Facebook page, which is a very, very good Facebook page. And they also have a website, which I encourage you to reach out to if you have some time. And Wendy also said that Leavenworth Main Street, in terms of the businesses downtown that are the direct investors to the Leavenworth Main Street, are doing their part to support downtown businesses by purchasing from the restaurants, purchasing gift cards, and we encourage each of you to do the same. And I think that's a good way to do it. Maintaining these prohibitions in terms of any groups, larger than 10 people, and keeping the proper social distancing, I think that's an excellent way to support our businesses, in particular restaurants, but I think some of the other business owners downtown have gotten a little creative too, particularly those who are active on social media in terms of either offering to deliver a particular order for their goods, or maybe somebody puts in an order and they meet out, rather than coming into the business, they meet outside the particular business. So I have seen some of that on Facebook as I've been looking at the various Facebook groups that operate within the Leavenworth community. The other thing that I think is that for direct relief for small businesses, what's going on now with at the national level with our Congress, our Senate and House of Representatives, is they are considering and trying to get passed a $1 trillion stimulus bill, which would include somewhere, what they're thinking right now, between $250 billion and $300 billion to help small businesses. It's called the Small Business Interruption Loan Program. And, that's not passed yet. It's, the challenge is trying to keep up with, what's going on. But once that legislation is passed, I believe that there will be some relief for small businesses. But then you get into the situation where, well, exactly how do I, how are those resources, those fiscal resources, made available? What are the procedures? I think we at the city, just in terms of once that particular bill is passed, which I think it should be within the next few days or a week, we can post a link to that particular bill, and then try to focus in on the things in that particular bill that could affect and maybe something that our small businesses are interested in terms of these loans that I'm talking about, and exactly the parameters behind those loans and whether those loans would be forgiven going forward. I think that's a possibility that the Senate and the House of Representatives are looking at, but we won't know until the actual legislation is passed and then signed by President Trump. But that is a part of that $1 trillion stimulus bill package that our U.S. Senate, our Congress is looking at now. And we as a city will do our best to just once that legislation is passed, to get the link to the legislation posted, and then try to focus down on those things that would help particularly our, not only residents, but most importantly our small business owners, because they are really facing a challenge right now. There's no question about it, and it's very, very tough situation now, and anything we can do to help ease that burden and help them stay viable is something we will do here at the city. Any other questions?
We have two comments that I think are noteworthy to share. We had somebody wanting to comment for us to emphasize and sort of give a shout out to the grocery stores and the workers in those grocery stores. Yes. I think they've done an amazing job stocking and restocking through sort of a time that nobody could anticipate. I know that they're also hiring right now. I think I've seen that out. But I think the comment was to talk about how well they've done and emphasize that they are stocked. There's no need to panic. They seem to have the essentials, or try to as fast as they can. I know there's been an issue with toilet paper, but I think that's a nationwide issue. But then also just that those workers are working extremely hard, as all of our workers are in the community, but they're facing that every day, that rush every day. And then just another comment, we can't go through everything that the city does versus what the county does. Functions like motor vehicles, car tags, those are county functions, not city functions. But we welcome those questions. We will send residents to the proper place. We understand at some point it's hard to keep track of which branch of government provides which services. So we're happy to continue to field those and continue to point our residents in the right direction.
Yeah, and talking about people who are on the front lines, let's, and I know our citizens are doing this, let's keep our medical professionals, our healthcare workers, the doctors, the nurses, the respiratory therapists in our thoughts and prayers as they fight the spread of COVID-19. They are doing unbelievably difficult work. They are courageous. I think about them many times each day and say a prayer for them. And last night I was listening to CNN and Dr. Gupta, who's their medical expert, who's been on that network for many, many years. And he is an actual practicing doctor at a hospital in New York City. I don't know which one, but he posted and showed some pictures of the medical personnel within his hospital, and they were holding up a sign from these various medical doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, and they had a message for us as citizens of the United States, and the signs read, "I stayed at work for you, please stay at home for me." And that's really the sacrifice that we're being asked to make as citizens of this great country, of this city, the first city of Kansas, our county, our state. So this is a time for everybody to step up, and I know, the great majority of us are doing that, but there's things above our level that we can't influence, but having those health professionals have the personal protective equipment, I believe there's no more important thing for our federal government and our state government to make sure that they have the tools and the protective equipment that they need to treat patients and to battle this COVID-19 virus. That's me personally talking, but I think a lot of citizens would share that thought with me. Any other questions? I've got a couple of others if there's none that have come in from the public. Will the kind of a specific question, will the 3 Mile Creek Trail Cleanup Grant Program still be able to go on?
So we still want to get those transient guest tax funds out to our local organizations. It was a great program last year. Anybody who's tuning in, you don't know what we're talking about. We have a grant program where we give a $500 donation to a nonprofit who cleans the 3 Mile Creek Trail through the downtown. We do inspect the trail. We expect a full cleaning of the trail, but then we're able to reinvest those dollars back into community organizations. The short answer is yes. We're going to let groups, we're going to insist that they use less than 10 people in groups, small groups, but it's a beautification effort. There's no reason it can't continue. It's not at a specific city facility, and I know those groups use those funds. So we are going to let the groups use their discretion whether they would like to continue, but we continue to plan to operate that program.
Okay. I think we put together about 10 or 11 questions. And we're getting about 45 minutes into this Facebook town hall. If you have additional, we have 15 more minutes if anybody does want to submit a question. But during our meeting on Tuesday, the city manager gave a relatively brief update on some of the things, or many of the things we've been talking about here this morning during our Facebook Live town hall. And then we went around the horn and each one of the commissioners weighed in. And I I gave a statement which I think would be a good way to maybe wrap up this Facebook town hall, just to let you know what my mindset is as the mayor, and I believe is the mindset of the entire commission and the city manager and his staff. So what I said and what I'll say here is that it is not often that we as Americans are able to sacrifice for the greater good. This is one of those times, and our ability to do this will keep our city and community healthy, and in the final analysis, save lives. But I don't underestimate the disruption to our lives that each and every one of us is beginning to experience. What we are going through is not normal. But as I said previously this morning, Americans are known for their ability to be agile and to adapt to the circumstances that they face. So if each one of us can step up and be responsible, we will come out of on the other side of this crisis better, both individually and collectively. I am cognizant of the economic difficulty that many of our citizens, and particularly businesses, are starting to experience and are going through. And my message is that the city manager and I as the mayor and my fellow commissioners will do everything we can possibly to do to keep you abreast of legislation and guidance emanating from the federal government, and guidance, policies, and any legislation from our state, and then really policies from the county governing bodies, particularly the county health office. And we've addressed some of those things this morning during our town hall. Most importantly, as we fulfill our responsibilities to the office, to the elected office that we hold, and to the citizens we serve, foremost in my mind will be the health, safety, and welfare of all Leavenworth citizens. That's our overriding priority as we look or have to deal with making adjustments to our services or making some cutbacks in the budget because we're not getting as much in the way of sales tax, as the city manager mentioned, because of the tremendous impact on our economic system across the country and here locally. Then we'll make those adjustments, but always with the health, safety, and welfare of our Leavenworth citizens foremost in mind, because the reason I'm in this job is to make Leavenworth the best city it can be. And in doing that, each and every day, but deal with things and try to set the conditions to improve the quality of life for all of us within the first city of Kansas. But please keep all of our fellow citizens and in your thoughts and prayers, and especially family members and friends who deliver the health care to people who are sick, and particularly who are impacted by this very highly communicable COVID-19 virus. So that just gives you kind of the mindset that I want you to be aware of, as your mayor, that I have, that the city commission has, and the city manager and his staff has as we move forward into the next weeks and months dealing with this crisis. I think there may be another question or two, so I will see if the city manager has a question that he could.
Sure, we have a question about, I think it's, couldn't we limit the days at recycling center to reduce the workload on sanitation workers? The recycling center is closed, and I think the question is, could we open it in a limited basis, kind of how we did with the brush site? We've definitely discussed that internally. It's a logistical issue. If you've been to the city's recycling center, I use it about every Saturday. Right now, and we've talked about maybe in the future expanding it and making it a little more enjoyable, it's very close quarters. And the difference between recycling and the brush side is recycling, you take your vehicle to the dump pile and you dump everything in the one. The recycling is a lot of walking around to the glass bin or the paper bin. The other challenge we have there is if we were to limit cars and stack them, we're stacking them in a neighborhood. The entrance to the recycling center is right next to people's homes. Mm-hmm. And I would hesitate for first responders issues and for the quality of life of those people set up a condition where there would be cars lined up in front of those houses. It's a great question. We are trying to figure out how we can continue to promote those sort of sustainable activities. Recycling is a passion for a lot of individuals. As I mentioned, I use it weekly. So evaluate it, good question. If you have an idea, pass it along, and we'll continue to work on that as well. But as of right now, it'll remain closed.
Well, I appreciate that answer and fully support it, and you get an idea of the things that have to be considered when reaching these decisions about the services that we're going to adjust or close, and I appreciate that. That shows a very in-depth approach and effort to make sure that the right decisions are being made, so I appreciate that. Was there another one, Mr. Mayor?
We had a question about public transit. The city doesn't operate public transit. There's no official public transit in the county. There's the Council on Aging, and there's some other functions. I just don't know on the Council of Aging. I would have to get back to you, and maybe we can post an answer on the Council of Aging Transportation. Public transit was an item on the agenda on Tuesday night. The city potentially applying for a state grant to maybe start a limited program in 2021. The best answer I can give on that is we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see on what it looks like next January, and I hope that answers the question that they had on public transit.
One thing in terms of all the social distancing and the staying at home and limiting our interaction with our fellow citizens. I mean, the reason we're doing this, and it's, and you've heard it on television, regardless of the channel or the networks that you're listening to. You've seen it on Facebook, social media sites, is that it's all about flattening this curve in terms of people and Americans who are actually diagnosed with this virus. And because if that curve is not flattened, our medical facilities, our hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. And I don't have the time to go into all the specifics, but if you've been listening to any of the programs that I just mentioned, that's really the concern in our emergency rooms and our hospitals being overwhelmed. There are certain parts of the country that's more of a factor right now. For instance, on the coasts in California and San Francisco, Los Angeles, of course on the East Coast in New York. But we've got to do our part in doing the best we can to follow these policies and practices, because it is all about flattening the curve, because this disease is very communicable. It spreads very, very easily. So the whole thing about just the simple things on washing hands, I mean, doing it for 20 or 30 seconds, and I know that I've changed, even though I've always washed hands a lot, I'm certainly spending a lot more time doing that, and it's very, very important, and it's one thing that I know that we'll pass along to our children and the younger generation, and get them in the habit of doing that, and not only for now, but it'll be a great lifelong habit or that will benefit the society and benefit our families and benefit our health overall on some of these things that we're focusing on right now to help spread, help contain and help knock out this, contain the spread of COVID-19. Was there another question, Mr. Chairman?
We had two. I think both of them are items we'll have to follow up on. One was a question about Spectrum free Wi-Fi for families in need. I've heard that information. I'd hate to put anything out that's not accurate. So we'll either provide a link to a Spectrum information on that. I'll reach out to the school district. I'm sure they've been in contact dealing with their school and their virtual needs. So we will follow up on that. And then how can people volunteer or offer resources to those in need? We have some wonderful partners with Catholic Charities, with the Leavenworth Food Pantry. We will put a list of those community resources on our webpage, and I would encourage you to reach out to them. The difference, I think, here, and I think everybody knows this, is volunteerism is usually accompanied by people gathering to provide aid or service, and that's exactly what's not needed right now. I know the Alliance Against Family Violence put out something yesterday that they have an urgent need for, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's essentially wipes and paper towels and those hand sanitizer, which I think everybody's looking for. those essentials still have to be done, and those can be done by dropping those goods off, I think, at the Kansas Country Store.
Okay.
So reach out to the Alliance. We'll start maybe collecting an area on our website of volunteer opportunities or volunteer contacts. But I know right now the last thing they probably want you to do is just show up at the door. So we'll follow up on that as well.
Yeah, on the spectrum thing, and I think that I've been in contact with a friend and a concerned citizen who's taking the initiative to reach out to some of the companies like Spectrum to see what might be available for our residents who may not have internet connectivity. And this is something that, yes, I'm concerned about as the mayor, but I know that the superintendent of the USD 453 Leavenworth School District is concerned about that too. And I encourage this particular person to just provide the information she's been able to gather to the district office and for them to work it. There's really probably not much I personally can do, but I applaud the effort in terms of from home, doing that research on the internet and everything, gathering those resources, and maybe there are some opportunities for families who don't have the internet connectivity, but maybe could get it through some type of program that you know, some of these companies like Spectrum might offer going forward. And of course, this is critical as the schools are going to deliver education for the rest of the year, because all the school districts in Kansas are closed for the rest of this particular school year. And for those who have internet connectivity, it's a little bit easier deal to conduct schooling that way. But for those families who may not have internet connectivity, the school district's going to meet their needs, but it'll be more paper-based. We had the superintendent, Dr. Roth, here on Tuesday and gave us a good update, and I urge you to go to the YouTube video, and because he spoke to us for about 10 minutes and talked about at least a general overview of what the school district is doing with respect to their changing model as far as delivering good learning curriculum, educational curriculum to the students within the city of Leavenworth and within our public school district. This person that I've been chatting back and forth with also mentioned a couple of, well, a lot of good, there is some good conversation going on some of the Leavenworth Facebook pages, but you got to be a little bit careful about some of the information there. But she mentioned a COVID-19 home educational resources Facebook site, Facebook page. I don't have the exact Facebook address or anything, but if you put that into your search engine in Facebook, COVID-19 home educational resources, it's she described it to me as a statewide resource that parents who have children in the schools might be interested in checking it out and see if there's something in there that could help them supplement what the district USD 453 is going to be coming out with, you know, as far as the rest of the school year for their students. And then there was she described it as a coronavirus relief Facebook page. And she described that as kind of a local, that was kind of the description if you put it into your search engine, a local, including surrounding.
It's been shared on our Facebook timeline,
Okay,
so
okay.
anybody watching should be able to see.
Okay, I guess it's been shared on our, great, and that's exactly the right answer, so I won't go on further, but this is one person who stepped up trying to do as much as she possibly can to help us as a community get through this crisis. See, we're getting, got a couple of minutes left, but any other questions?
No, I think we're wrapped up for now, and continue to submit your questions. Once we go off air, we'll continue to respond to those questions as they come.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for participating in this Facebook live event, and we'll learn from things we'll sustain the things we've done well. We'll look at things that can be done better, and I'm confident that in the not-too-distant future, we'll have another virtual town hall versus Facebook to let you know what's going on in the city and how the city is carrying out its mission in terms of taking care of citizens and trying to improve the quality of life of all the citizens of Leavenworth, and also helping us as a community deal with this COVID-19 crisis. So thank you, good morning, and have a good rest of your Friday.